Good afternoon. Is it good afternoon? Is it good? It's certainly good afternoon here in the UK, where at least two of us are. I'm Simon Brett, and I am very much in the captain's chair today. Do you know what? Do you know what, people? I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I had a dream." Yes, yes, it was. And do you know what? More importantly, it was Dennis DeYoung, and of course, Don Wolfe from Canada's White Wolf, who told us that dreams can come true. And 10, 12 years ago, I had a dream. I started writing for Sea of Tranquility, and I thought to myself, one day, Simon, if you're a really good boy, you will get to be your very own Captain Kirk, and you will get to be in the captain's chair, not the co-captain's chair, the captain's. It feels good. Feels good. It really does. I am distinctly happy to be here, and I am here in the presence of my good friends, Mr. Stephen Reid. We'll go with him first. Not from anywhere near Edinburgh.
No, nowhere near Edinburgh. No,
nowhere near Edinburgh. Good to see you, Stephen. And with my equally good friend, Mr. Pete Pardo, who's not from Poughkeepsie either. So yes, indeed.
Oh, yeah. Poughkeepsie and Edinburgh. There we go.
Excellent. So we're here for the homework assignment between you two chaps. And for the uninitiated, these two chaps have been sharing music, none of which is Joy Division, between each other, and they've been listening to it intently, making notes and getting ready to discuss some top quality music. And then at the end, they will decide whether or not they like it by either buying it, saying they would buy it, whether they would stream it, or they would bin it. Let's hope that one of us has got a heartless heart and goes for the bin it situation. Yeah, so into the fire we go. Yeah. Why is he going to fight tooth and nail? Let's turn on the action, and let's first go to the man with the shirt himself, Stephen Reid.
Okay, so the album that Peter gave me to listen to is really quite new. Came out earlier, I was going to say this year, while time warp. It came out last year. This is 2022 that we're in now. So right. The band is called the Vintage Caravan. Okay, and the album is called Monuments. Now, I was aware of the Vintage Caravan, but out of the plethora of bands that are out there, never actually heard a single note by them that I'm aware of. So I had to kind of think, know nothing about them at all. So they are from Iceland, I believe. Yeah. Not a huge amount of Icelandic rock and metal out there. I've got stuff by Solstifer, I think are from Iceland. Not much more from Iceland, is there? Don't know.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. An Icelandic three-piece who formed in 2006. And this is their, well, depending on how you want to look at the discography, it's their fourth or fifth album, because I believe that this first and second album kind of, but never heard it, so I don't know. And they're now on Napalm Records, having been on Nuclear Blast for the last couple of albums. So the way that I would describe them is they are kind of a mainly kind of riff-fueled, it's retro rock, massive grooves. It's quite accessible. There's sing-along choruses, and it's not overly aggressive. It's quite contained while still being really quite heavy. And there's a kind of psychedelic edge in there as well. But they sound quite current, in actual fact. They're very kind of late 60s into the 70s. That's where the roots, I would say, come from. That's where the base of the sound comes from. But in terms of the way they present it, I think they sound really quite now, which I quite like. It's a really good blend of the two. And as it's reasonably, I can't find a better word than polished, because it's not, the vocals are really smooth, really good in actual fact. The vocals are really good. That's one of the main things that kind of struck me about it. Oscar Logi Augustsson is the singer and the guitarist, okay? I'm going to absolutely murder these. Alexander Orn Numason on bass, and Stefan Ari Stephenson, which does sound a little bit like a comedy name, but I don't think it is. I'm always wary when any nation people call their children roughly the same surname as the forename. But anyway, and that's the drummer in the band. He's brilliant, by the way. He's absolutely brilliant. He is so capable of really just sitting in the pocket. But just absolutely roaring out of the pocket as well. At the same time, he can drive the song on, but the fills are fantastic. He's a serious talent, and I'm amazed there's not more. Maybe there is more said about him, and I just haven't heard it. So, as I say, this is my first encounter with a band. There's 11 songs, I think, on Monuments. So let's just kind of have a flavour of what's there. So it opens with Whispers, and there's a kind of psychedelic swirl. It took me immediately, I thought, okay, we're going to head into something that's like kind of like Hawkwind, but it doesn't really. It's kind of got that flair about it, but it doesn't sound like them. But they're not a million miles away. There's a bit of Sabbath in there because of just the really kind of gargantuan riffs. The grooves remind me of Clutch, but it's not kind of got that kind of more blues-based sound about it all the way through. And then there was a couple of things when I was sitting again listening to it last night. I thought, what is it that's two flavours that I thought I just can't get there? And this morning it clicked. Vocally, it actually reminds me of Ghost. There's the kind of production on it more than anything else, or maybe the effects on the vocals. I wouldn't say that they sound like each other, but I can imagine them singing each other's songs in that sense. And then Captain Beyond, there's a blast from the past. It kind of took me into that kind of, certainly the early Captain Beyond. It's very riff fueled. There's a kind of progressive edge to it, but I could never call them prog. There's no prog kind of noodling or whatever, but they're not straight ahead. There's more to it than that. So it moves into Crystallized, roughly in the same territory there. There's a really spacey guitar solo that I really liked, and the bass work in that song that's going on behind the solo is really, really good. Can't Get You Off My Mind. That's one of the catchier moments. There's a proper chorus there that you can't get off your mind, funnily enough. The vocals are really smooth, some excellent guitar playing in that one as well. And then from there, things kind of change a little bit. The pace of the album moves. This One's For You, I kind of almost took me to early Fleetwood Mac with a touch of George Harrison, but heavier. And I kind of like that kind of retro, but it's not relying on just that for its basis. There's more to it than that. And then Forgotten has a real space trucking by Deep Purple vibe about it. It's got the but it's done just in a slightly different way. It feels a little bit more structured. Deep Purple, that was one of those songs that always felt loose and live. I mean, it took up a whole side of an album back in the day. It doesn't. I would really like to actually hear what they can do live. Do they kind of open up and jam and let the songs flow, or are these really tightly constructed and this is what you get? I don't know, but it would be interesting to find out. Sharp Teeth, that's a bit heavier, a bit more Sabbath in there. There's a bit of Cream going on in there as well. I like the kind of groove that's there. It's kind of got that, sort of fuzzed up, but not messy sound about it that Cream used to have. And I like that as well. It's about 6 minutes, that song. There's a few of the songs are 6, 7, 8 minutes. And I find you get to the end of them and think, I might actually just play that one again. And that's a really good thing about songs that are a little bit longer, because they're mixed in with shorter moments as well, which I liked. But there's a real cohesive sound, but they don't just rely on one aspect. And Hell, which you would expect to be the heaviest hammering blow on the whole album, actually is one of the more contained moments. And it took me into somewhere almost kind of like Blue Oyster Cult, where they can kind of hit you with the mellowness. Because Blue Oyster Cult I often listen to Blue Oyster Cult and think, they're not as heavy as I remember them. But by remember,
really
I mean,
not. Yeah, the music is very moody, right? And just kind of,
yeah. But in my head, Blue Oyster Cult are a really heavy band. And then I play them and think, oh, but they're not. But they kind of are. And that's what I thought with Hell. And also, I suppose a lot of this album kind of feels along those sort of lines. But Hell in particular, and I must admit that song, it got under my skin. I really like it. It's one of the highlights on the album for me. But it got under my skin for a different reason, because it was, you get one of those songs where you think, I've heard bits of this before, and you haven't, but it just reminds you of something.
Yeah.
And I lost at least an hour thinking, is it this? No. Is it that? Well, play the two together. Nope. And I literally was sitting down just before we went to record this show, and Heart Full of Soul by the Yardbirds popped into my head. And I thought, oh, I've got to go and listen to that before we start. And I put it on and I thought, well, that's really, I'm in the right direction now. Now, bear with me. This honestly is not set up. But if you go and listen to the Dokken cover of Heart Full of Soul and listen to that arrangement and play it alongside Hell by the Vintage Caravan, please do, Simon, and everybody else, and tell me if there's not a massive similarity between the two of them. And that is not a setup. This has not been set up. This is actually not even why I'm wearing this. I'm wearing this because I didn't even know that Simon was going to do that phenomenal link at the start. I just knew that he'd been sent to listen to Dokken and hadn't, and people were like, how could he not? I don't know. Okay, but that is genuinely where it took me to. So from there, there's another 3 tracks after that, torn into, there's a kind of Ian Gillan-like phrasing to the vocals on that. And
I'll be right back.
And that really,
I'm gonna go grab the CD just for
okay. And that really kind of, I think, sums up where we're at with the whole ethos of what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to be heavy, but they're trying to be bluesy. They're trying to be psychedelic, but they're trying to be proggy. And what they actually do, yeah, the album art's great as well, I have to say, is that they bring it all together. And they sound like lots of different things without ever once making you think, oh, they're just ripping them off, or they're just lifting it from there. And I really like the variety as we go through it. And there's more great drumming on that song as well. So then you get Said and Done, which is possibly the most straight ahead song on the album. It's a little heavier. It's probably my least favorite moment, just because it doesn't really do that much to grab you. And everything else has quite a lot of variety within what's going on. And it just felt, to me, a little lost in there. Nothing wrong with it. If I put it on and that was the first thing I'd heard by them, I'd have probably still gone, oh, okay, let's hear more. But it just doesn't excite me as the way the rest of the album does. And I quite like the way that they close things out, because Clarity, which is quite a neat title for it, is actually a very clear song. It leaves quite a heavy riff-fueled retro album on a really smooth and mellow end. And I really like it. It's quite brave to finish the album like that, considering what's come before. But I actually think, and it's a dying art in this day and age, is that the flow and the dynamics across the album have really been thought about. The album builds, and then it recedes, and then it builds. And they're quite happy to let you end the album on that kind of mellow, reflective tone. So yeah, a really interesting journey. Heavy, but not overly heavy. Bluesy, but not overly bluesy. Psychedelic. I could go on and on and on. All of those touching points that I've mentioned to this point are all there. None of them are overdone, but they're all brought together in quite a neat little package.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how I think you and I look at this album and the band in general almost identical, because I've been following them since pretty much the beginning, and I've always thought the same thing. It's like they're this, but not quite. They're this, but not quite. You hear all their influences, but they don't sound like any of those bands. And you know what I was thinking too? I've often thought throughout the course of enjoying all their albums that there's something, there's an album out there that they always reminded me of that I can never quite pinpoint. And it came to me as you were talking before. And because I was listening to this very album just recently, Scorpions' Lonesome Crow, the very first album.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because that album is psychedelic, but not overly, because you mentioned the Hawkwind thing, right? And there's some Hawkwind moments on that first Scorpions album. It's heavy, but it's not too heavy. It's bluesy, but it's not blues rock, right? And it's kind of metallic. You got these amazing guitar solos. And that album reminds me a lot of this band, I think. More so than in all my years of reviewing their albums. I've thrown all these other bands out there, all these classic 70s hard rock and blues rock bands. And I think that the essence of what is Lonesome Crow really hits home for me when I listen to these guys. But it doesn't sound like a 1971 album, right? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier on, is that it's clear where the influences are. and they make no bones about that. And I think they're maybe better because they make no bones about that. However, there are some bands out there, and some do it really well. Some go as far as to use vintage equipment, and they sound like a band that actually could have recorded that album in, say, 1974.
Yeah.
This album, I can't talk about anything before because I don't know, but this album sounds like it was recorded in 2021.
Yeah.
And that can often be a weakness when you talk about kind of retro rock and retro metal, but I don't think so here at all. I actually think it's a real strength that they don't rely on one thing or another, or another, or another. They're just happy to kind of bring it all together and leave you to decide whether you can go with it on the journey with them. And I actually quite like to be treated in that way when you listen to an album, rather than there's loads of good albums out there that you think, you've heard the first 2 songs, you've heard it all. Yeah. Really, they're just going to do all of those things again after that. This doesn't really do that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought after the first kind of couple, I thought, got a handle on this. I kind of know what this is. This could be quite an easy little thing to listen to. And the longer it went, the more I thought, oh no, actually, this is quite clever. Well, actually, they're doing this now. So yeah, it was an interesting journey through it.
So I'm assuming you did the research. Were you surprised at how young they are?
Yes, yeah, and
they're
also
kids. I mean, they're like they're in their early 20s. Yeah,
and they don't sound like that in terms of what they play, but also in terms of how proficient they are as well. Yeah. And I also liked, because I don't do Spotify and all of these things, so when I do these kind of listening exercises, it tends to be YouTube that I rely on. And there's a lot of little videos that go along with the album, and there's a lot of humor involved in them too. That kind of quirky, I mean, they're not Scandinavia, it's Iceland, it's further up than that, but that kind of Scandinavian bizarre sort of humor that is there. And the videos, I'm not a video guy. I'm not one of these guys that'll sit on YouTube and watch music video. I'll put the music video on and go to a different page. I just want to hear the music. That's where I'm at. But I must admit, I did actually go, why are they buried in the ground? Okay, let's follow this. And then they're chasing a guy in a bite. This is just weird. It made me watch it because it was a bit weird. So there's quite a lot of aspects if you like different things along with your music as well.
Yeah. I would say for anybody watching, if you haven't heard about this band before, everybody talks about Greta Van Fleet and Rival Sons as the kind of the more notable of the younger bands who are spearheading the 70s movement. Vintage Caravan need to be mentioned in that discussion because they're really, really good. All their albums are really good.
What I liked, we've never spoken about Greta Van Fleet. I like them. They're too blatant for me personally. I struggle with bands who kind of go, we sound like this band, and that's kind of what they do. And I think Greta Van Fleet clearly want to be Led Zeppelin, and that's kind of where they're at. That's what they're about. They do it very, very, very well, and I would happily sit and listen to them. But I get to a stage where I've kind of had enough of that and think, I'm just going to put on some Zeppelin, because how can you better that? What's the point? The Vintage Caravan, that's one of the things that actually struck me about this album, is they don't do that. They will say, yes, we like all of the things from this era, but we want to sound like something slightly different. And I think they sound like something slightly different. And that, to me, makes it a more interesting prospect.
Excellent. All done. Fantastic. I was really sold until the words Rival Sons.
No. I didn't say Rival Sons.
I know you didn't. He did. No. It's okay. It's okay.
No, but they don't sound anything like Rival Sons. I just used them as an example of like bands who have this kind of 70s sound that are modern. But no,
Rival Sons will definitely get a mention in concert-based UK connection videos at some point soon. So that was the Vintage Caravan Monuments on Napalm Records. I'm excited by that. I already feel like I know which way you're going to be leaning, but we'll find out at the end. Now, Peter, what did your Uncle Stephen give to you?
So what I was given here is a band I had not heard about before, other than in passing. The band is a English band called Tobruk. Tobruk.
They're named after a World War II battle.
Got you. Okay. So it's the debut album from 1985, Wild on the Run. So, like I said, I really had no idea what this was all about going in. I took one look at the at the album cover, CD cover, and I was like, all right, 1985. I think I can probably get a little bit of an idea here. So started playing the album. The title track, Wild on the Run, is the first song. Pretty damn terrific. Catchy song. Fairly heavy though, but not overly so, because these guys kind of came out right at the tail end of the new wave of British heavy metal. I don't know if I'd call this album metal. There are like metallic guitars and there are some heavy moments, but what I'm getting more, at least from the title track, which, like I said, really, really good, catchy hard rock song. Kind of like Praying Mantis from the same time period. Praying Mantis were one of those new wave of British heavy metal bands that were very different from a lot of the rest of them, as they had, the keyboards and the big soaring vocals, more of like a melodic rock band than anything else. And one of the things that strikes me about this entire album is how American it sounds. I mean, this is, a bunch of British guys, and like this album sounds like it could have been from a band from New Jersey. Hint, hint, which we'll get to a little bit here. So I off to a great start. Wild on the Run, really good song. I'm amazed that this didn't catch on here in the States, because most of this album would have been tailor-made for this market here. Second track is called Falling. Reminds me of the first Bon Jovi album. Good, catchy, melodic hard rock, just enough keyboards, crisp guitars, vocals are outstanding. Really not much not to like here. Very, very accessible. Again, why wasn't this like a million seller here in the States? I don't know. Track number 3, Running from the Night. This one really intrigued me. It's got big guitar riffs, lots of Hammond organ. Well, folks who know me know I love big guitar riffs and lots of Hammond organ. This is one of my favorites on the album. I really like this one. Again, it's hard charging rock. I don't know if I want to call it metal, but it borders on that. Great chorus. It's got all the elements I really like. So it's off to a really good start. First 3 tracks, really, really great. Then we get to track number 4, Hotline. Here we got really cheesy mid-80s synths. I'm not sure I like the chorus. One of my least favorite songs on the album. This to me just sounds like a lot of other stuff, again, that was released here in the States around the same time period. Very generic sounding, but very in line with what was popular at the time. But for me, definitely a little step back from the first 3 tracks. Track number 5, Rebound. Big, muscular riffs. Very US sounding chorus and hooks and things like that. Again, pretty good. Fairly heavy. Why people here never listen to this band, I don't know. Poor Girls is next. Kind of more of the same. It's from this point in the album where I'm starting to get a little bit, hear a little redundancy and starting to hear a little bit, all right, I've heard this sort of thing before, although it is good. It's pretty catchy, but it's kind of generic sounding. She's Nobody's Angel, the next track. Cliches all over the place here. But it's fun. Big melodic rock song. Big hooks. If this was a band that kind of debuted in 2020 or 2021 or 22 doing that kind of style, I could see this being released on Frontiers Records and people going gaga over this. I mean, it's just like this, it's from a time and it's so much like a lot of stuff from that time, but you can still listen to it and say, this brings back good memories, right? Track number 8, Breakdown. Great guitar work. Crisp and punchy, meaty. The chorus is killer. This is a really good song. Breakdown, I could totally see going to see this band live and just getting into it, singing at the top of my lungs with a beer in one hand, fist in the other hand. One of my favorites on the album. This is right in line with the first 3 tracks. I like this a lot. Going Down for the Third Time. Just by the title alone, going in, I'm like, what kind of road are we going down for the third time here? It sounds like they're trying really hard for a hit to get some radio play. It sounds a little forced to me, but it is pretty catchy and appealing. So again, back in the day, would I have listened to this? If I saw this sitting in my local record store in the CD bin, I would have bought it. Or if I would have heard this on the radio, I would have totally gotten into it. That this whole album is like that. To me, it's just like, it's like a what if type of thing for me. Maybe for folks in the UK, a little bit different, but Wild on the Run, single version of what I listened to, basically the same song, just kind of truncated a little bit. And then I heard they had a bonus track available on YouTube, which is called The Show Must Go On, which I guess was recorded right around the same time. Really good rampaging hard rocker. arguably as good, if not better than anything else on the regular album. I really like that a lot. And it's I can't tell you how many times that's happened where you go and listen to like a reissue of something and there's a bonus track on there that was recorded during the sessions and you're like, wow, why was this left off the album? This is just as good as anything else on there. So and so it's 11 tracks on the, I guess, the remastered reissue that I listened to. So final thoughts, I guess. Pretty enjoyable album. Reminds me again of like Praying Mantis. A little bit of like Peter Golby era Uriah Heep in spots. So like maybe a Abominog and the Equator, those couple albums, the 3 albums that he did with Uriah Heep, although not as keyboardy, I don't think. And certainly very early Bon Jovi, certainly a little Dokken in spots, a little bit of Shy in spots, and a little Firehouse.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I got a little fatigued though with it as I got to sort of the back end of the album, but I can honestly say that half the album I enjoyed quite a bit. The other half, not as much. And it's amazing. I before Simon gets to ask the question, I did go to look and see like what's available with this album, and it looks like it has been out of print for quite a while. So for folks who do those reissues, Rock Candy, I'm talking to you. This might be a perfect opportunity to jump on that. So there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, it has been reissued a couple of times as the version that you heard with the bonus tracks on. They only did 2 albums, Tobruk. It's interesting. Some of the things you've picked out there, Peter, are really key because the album is co-produced by the band and Lance Quinn. Now, Lance Quinn was part of the production team on Bon Jovi's debut album.
There you have
so
it.
you hear those keyboard sounds and you can suddenly go, yeah, okay, so that's what Lance was bringing to these bands, because there is a huge amount of similarities there. But the single Wild on the Run first kind of came to prominence or was thought about, was out there in 83. So in terms of time, they really are, are they ahead, are they slightly behind of the band that would really come to notice with this sound? Because it is a massive, to me, debut Bon Jovi album sound about this. And it's interesting because once the band split, they did Wild on the Run, and then they did 2 years later, Pleasure and Pain. Now, both of these have been reissued on CD. Both of
Isn't that a plain album cover? Holy smokes.
It's the light. There is a figure in here.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, who was the
yeah.
genius that designed that one? Holy cow.
Yeah, it's a female figure wearing not a huge amount. So whether they got cold feet and decided to make it a little bit more, I don't know. But there you go. There's
5 shots on the back is always key. There you
go. And then they disbanded after that. However, some of them did do some interesting things after this. Now, honestly, I do like more bands than the Wild Hearts. However, the singer, and this is not why I had the Tobruk album before the Wild Hearts were a thing, because my brother this is my brother's copy that I've ended up with all these years down the line. Stuart Neal, who was known as Snake for whatever reason, no idea, let's not go there. He was an early singer in the Wild Hearts, never recorded with them. I do have demos with them. It doesn't really work. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2006, way too young. But as you look through the rest of the band, Nigel Evans did a little stint with Shy, I think just on the road. Eddie Fincher, the drummer, and Jem Davis, the keyboard player, they both formed Midnight Blue with Doogie White. So there's, they went on to something else after that. And Jem Davis also did play a little bit with UFO and with Praying Mantis. And as Simon will know, has been a mainstay in FM for a long, long time. So interestingly, what they did afterwards was maybe more celebrated than Tobruk, which I think is a real shame, because I think they were a really good band. But the final version, after the second album came out, they actually did some work with Tony Martin for a very short period of time before he went on into Black Sabbath. So it's an interesting story, and I think that it's UK melodic rock from this era is very much sneered at. I think it's people kind of go, oh, no, it was an American thing. The UK bands couldn't do it. It was all a budget version. And it's all to do with time and place. Because a band who did a very similar debut and then followed it up with a so-so album, in my opinion. 7,000 A on Fahrenheit is not the best Bon Jovi album. Has some really good songs on it. It's not their best album. Then went to superstardom. Tobruk stuttered and stumbled and fell apart. And I really think it's purely to do with one is in the right place at that right time, and one is in the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the two. And I find with hindsight, those journeys very interesting, because there was lots of bands like Tobruk with some great songs, but maybe not the full album, that had they been given 3 or 4 albums, may well have gone on to something utterly ginormous. Or not, who knows?
I just if I can interject on 2 things that struck me whilst you were talking there. Number 1, Jem Davis wears cut-off denim jacket / waistcoats better than anybody else in the entire universe. Yeah. And I wonder how many times he's heard the phrase "whoa" at the start of any particular given song. Just kind of wondering. Yeah. But Lance Quinn produced one of my very favorite albums, which is Flip by Nils Lofgren. And whenever I play that, I just make sure I've got to get leg warmers and everything else on, because it couldn't be more nailed on, synthesized 1985 if it tried very, very hard. That's his thing, isn't it? That's just like, whoa, yeah. Huge synth, stabby synth. Yeah, that's the thing. Anyhow, it's that time. Yes, indeed. So we've got the Vintage Caravan monuments. Our friends from Iceland who are a bit current. They've got riffy grooves. They're quite smooth vocals. They're hawk-windy, Sabbathy, clutchy, Captain Beyondy, like a slightly mellow Blue Oyster Cult. They're also heavy, bluesy, proggy, psychedelic. But I think this is crucial for me. If I was going to, and I have downloaded it while you've been there, you've told me, Stephen Reid, that it was tracked like a proper album. And because I'm 700 years old, I like that. I like to listen to albums from beginning to end. Yeah, that's what I like to do. So that's good. Pete said it's also a bit like Lonesome Crow from the Scorpions even. And I wonder if there's any way you can find out about Lonesome Crow. If anybody's had a chat about that recently, for it being quite old. I don't know if that's the case. We'll find out. Yeah. So here we are, Stephen. Are you ready? You've got 3 choices in front of you. Minute, buy it, or stream it. Which option are we taking?
Well, I'm not a streamer. I'm also not a streaker, but I'm not a streamer. This would be a no-brainer for me. Really, one listen to this, and I went back and listened to it all over again straight away. So yes, it's a buy it, and it's a buy it now, and it's a go and listen to the rest of the catalogue very quickly. Is what it is. It's an excellent recommendation, and I would heartily recommend that everybody else does exactly the same.
I'm excited by that. Well done, both of you. But everyone's a winner here, aren't they? I feel like that'll be the case. But Peter Tobruk, Wild on the Run from 1985. It's not metal. It's a bit generic sounding in places. I'm trying to push you somewhere here, I really am. But it's got muscular riffs, big sounding choruses, but it's a bit cliche ridden in places as well. But it's crispy, it's punchy, it's meaty, it's catchy and appealing. And it's a record of 2 halves. So are you going to keep half of it, bin half of it, or stream half of it, or just do something with the whole of it? Tell the people now.
Well, seeing as it looks like I can't buy it because it's either so damn expensive or hard to find, that's not going to happen. But I definitely won't bin it or forget it. I think this is going to be an album that I'm going to want to revisit on, because I don't do Spotify either, on YouTube from time to time. And if I do see it reissued once again, at a decent price, I will probably seek it out at that point.
Fantastic, outstanding. I feel like we've come to the end of this homework assignment. You remember about living the dream? I've always wanted to say the following. I'm Simon Bray from Sea of Tranquility. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and here on whatever it is, YouTube, all the damn time, all of it, just forever. Yes, I'm Simon Bray, and they're Pete Pardo. I'm Stephen Reid, and goodbye.
Bye, everybody.